Hello and welcome to another Wolftime Gaming video. Today we're going to be painting a B1 battle droid for use in Star Wars Legion. We're going to be turning him from this into this. To do that we're only going to be using 4 paints today, 5 for the droid commander. Before we get started though, as usual, let's get the kettle on. Okay, so the first thing you need to do is give it a good base coat of a light colour. Now I've used a white paint from Tamiya, just a spray can that I've managed to pick up. This gives you a really good starting point. It shows up all the details nicely, but most of all it allows you to use the Games Workshop contrast paints really nicely. I wanted to go with that traditional colour as you see in the original films, particularly Phantom Menace, where you first see these droids actually appear, so I wanted that tan colour. Now the colour I used to do that was Citadel Colours Contrast Skeleton Horde that you can get through Games Workshop. And this is brilliant. You can see as it's applying onto the actual model itself, it's already dropping into the recesses. You're getting a really good amount of detail showing up on there. All the raised areas, the paint goes on quite thin, so it shows up all the lines along the panels. But most of all, it's a really quick and easy way to get actually these guys painted. Without them, you'd probably need 2 or 3 different shades of this type of colour to be able to show the details really nicely. But in this instance, you can see all I'm doing is taking it straight out of the pot, straight onto the model, giving it one really nice thick coat, and it does all the work for you. So it's very little effort needed, and you can get through an army of these pretty much in an afternoon. Now there are so many different variations of the B1 battle droid out there. You see lots of different ones, like on the Battle of Kashyyyk you've got ones with almost a camouflage pattern on, but I really wanted to stick with this classic look for what I wanted really. What I might do in the future if I pick any more up is put a little bit of colour on there, maybe a reds for the sort of marines that you see on starships and stuff, like you do in the first film right at the beginning. But for what I wanted on these, it's really easy. Now one thing you can do, and one thing I will point out, is what I'm doing here is taking away any areas where it's pooled, where I don't want it, just on the joints and things where there's a lot of paint gone on there. You can just touch the brush on there and it'll just pull that paint away, so it should just show the sort of tan colour instead of like a dark brown essentially. After you've given that a little bit of time to dry, you get this sort of effect, and I think it looks really, really good. And the next stage is the weapons and things themselves. To do that, I used Corvus Black, which is a Citadel base paint. You can pick up a contrast paint if you wanted to and a black paint to do this. I haven't got that one at the moment, and it'd go on in exactly the same way as you've used Skeleton Horde. In this instance, I used the Corvus Black though, and it was just to really get a decent coverage on the actual binoculars that this droid commander is actually holding, and his weapon itself. It's a really sort of a bluey grey tinge to this paint. It's a really nice black. It's not too dark, so you don't really need to highlight it, which is why you can get this painted really quickly in comparison to other models you might want to pick up. Later on in the video I do show that I've highlighted a few areas of it, but you don't really need to do that. You can leave it as just this black and it looks nice and effective. Now one thing I have seen in the past is these binoculars and things are a light grey sort of a colour. But you don't need to do that. You can paint them up as you want, however you want, and just for ease of use really, and to show you how quick it is to get one of these painted, I wanted to do it the same colour as his actual weapon, so we're using minimal paints to get maximum effect. One thing I will say is you really need to try and take your time with this, with the black areas, purely because you've just done all the skeleton horde paint, contrast paint on the model, so you don't really want to go over that. If you do, don't worry, what you can do is take it back up to a white, reapply the skeleton horde on the area that you've done that, and that'll actually tidy it up nicely. But I would definitely just take your time, rest your wrist on the table, really anchor them down so there's not as lot of movement, and you'll be able to do that quite easily. Now, in this instance, I'm also using this black to paint the base. As you can see, it goes quite streaky when you first put it on, especially over the white because it's quite a thin paint. However, don't worry about that. It's normal. Do around the edges, do the actual base itself, then go back to the edges, giving it a nice second coat, and that'll give you a really good coverage. Don't try and go straight on top of the areas that are streaky with the black paint. Give it just a few minutes to dry, which is why I've moved on to the actual base part of it before I go around the edges again. Purely because you'll just keep moving the paint around and you won't get that effect. You'll just cover it with loads and loads of paint. It'll get really blotchy and won't look very good in the end. So you can see now, as I've done the base, it only takes a few minutes to actually start to dry. I can go straight over the sides, giving it a nice coverage of black, framing the model really nicely, and then I can go back to the actual base part of it and paint it again, which means you've got a complete black base, which is a nice starting point for your the actual base colour that you can go on to and whatever you decide to use. So after a little bit of time, you just leave that to dry. I then have gone on to using Citadel's technical paint, the Martian Iron Earth. Now with this, it is a technical paint, so it's a little bit different to a normal paint. You don't put it on the same way. It needs to be actually caked on there quite thick. You can see how much I'm actually putting onto this. It's almost like bubbly. It's really, really thick. You just completely coat this, coat the model in this, and it will take quite a long time to dry. But as you'll see in a few minutes, you'll get a really nice effect that gives it a natural sort of a ground feel, especially with this sort of a colour, this Martian colour. I think it looks quite cool. In the same way as the black, don't try and coat this too, like keep going over the top of it, because you'll just move it around. But what you can do is just get more and just touch it on top of the actual areas that you aren't covered, which means then you're getting a decent coverage on the base. You can see actually how thick this is. It looks very, very wet, very gloopy, but you could just keep piling it on. The thicker this goes on, the better as well. So make sure that all dries out, and you can see the difference now. Where you had that really gloopy sort of a look, you can see the difference on the actual base of the model. And what it does, it really dries out and goes all in cracks really nicely. You get this really good effect, like a dried out soil, which is brilliant. And essentially that is your model finished. 3 paints. You use the Corvus Black, the Skeleton Horde, and the Martian Iron Earth, and he's ready for the tabletop. You don't need to do anything else if you don't want to, and he looks absolutely fantastic the way he is. In this instance, I am going to show you a few other things I've actually done to the model to bring him up to the sort of next level, and I've used the Flash Kits Yellow just to cover the areas on the Droid Commander as you see in the films, which is just on the back of the head and his forehead, and he's got like a round circle on his chest and 2 yellow lines down each arm. Now this really does finish it off nicely, and you really do need to take your time with this though, because as I said with the black earlier, you don't want to go over any areas that you want to keep that sort of tan Skeleton Horde colour. I'm using Army Painter's Insane Detail brush to do this, just because it's got a really fine head on it. You can pick these up quite cheaply as well. They're not too expensive, and it just allows you just to touch in those smaller areas. If you do go over any of the recesses on the back of the head, I know I did when I did it, all you need to do is then pick up your Skeleton Horde contrast, just touch it in those recesses, and it'll just fill naturally because it's nice and thin. It'll drop into the recesses itself, and you've got that effect again. It doesn't really make much of a difference with the yellow. It's only if you go with a darker paint you wouldn't be able to do that. The centre of the chest is a really awkward place to actually get to, and it is a little bit of a pain. You could just leave this, to be honest, and you wouldn't actually lose anything by leaving it off. It'd still look amazing on the tabletop. All I've done though is just touched in a general circle feel. I haven't got an exact circle on his chest, and it looks pretty good when you've finished. And the yellow line is what it is. It's literally just like paint a yellow line on his arms, and he's done. And again, he's ready for the tabletop. You can just drop him straight on the table as he is, without any more effort, and he looks absolutely fantastic. What I'm actually doing here though is just going over the rifle, and I do touch slightly on the binoculars as well with a Leadbelcher silver paint, just to really highlight the few of the areas on the actual rifle itself, and just so it's not that plain black, just to give a little bit of interest really. You don't have to do this, it's only a little effect that I wanted towards the end, and I wasn't going to do it, but when I looked at it I thought, well, I just want to add in that little bit more just to make him look really, really good in the end. The final detail as well that I've actually put on the Mini is 2 pink dots just on the end of the binoculars. Not that you'd be able to see this anyway, it was just really for me. And there we have it, guys. Model's complete. I'm really, really pleased with how he looks. I think he's absolutely fantastic. The other droid there just shows the difference without the yellow, really. I've still used the silver Leadbelcher paint to pick out the details on his rifle, but they're looking absolutely amazing. It only took a short amount of time to do. As I said earlier on in the video, you can just use the Contrast Skeleton Horde, Corvus Black, and the Martian Iron Earth, and your model would be absolutely done. And you wouldn't need to do any other work to it. You can add the Flash Kits Yellow to the commanders, just to add that little bit of detail, and a little bit of Leadbelcher paint just on the rifles to highlight a few of the edges. But otherwise, you don't need to do anything else with these. It's a really, really quick technique to be able to get an army on the tabletop really quickly with very minimal effort, really. Thanks for watching, guys. I hope you enjoyed the video. Make sure you subscribe to see any future ones, and I'll see you in the next one.